So how exactly does a navy with a bunch of small boats and some old-school mines go up against the most powerful fleet on the entire planet? And how do they manage to do it in a waterway that is absolutely vital to the global economy? Believe it or not, this isn't some war game scenario. It's the real-life puzzle playing out right now in the Straits of Hormuz. It's a fascinating clash of strategies, where overwhelming firepower is running headfirst into a very stubborn, very clever asymmetric game plan.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break all this down. First, we'll look at the initial American show of force, that big opening punch. Then, we're going to dive into Iran's crafty counter-strategy. From there, we'll zone in on the battleground itself, check out the massive global economic impact, see how other world powers are playing their own angles, and finally, look at the three main ways this whole dangerous situation could end.
To really wrap our heads around what's happening now, we have to rewind to the beginning of Operation Epic Fury, because what the US and its allies did right out of the gate was a textbook display of overwhelming modern military power. In the very first hours, the US and Israeli precision strikes were, well, just devastating. It was this coordinated blitz that basically destroyed or crippled over 150 of Iran's naval vessels and support craft. In one single clean shot, they effectively took Iran's entire conventional navy right off the board.
And the whole point of this shock and awe is pretty straightforward. End the fight before it even really got started. By using this incredible network of satellites and advanced targeting systems, the idea was to totally paralyze Iran's traditional navy. It really looked like they had achieved complete control of the sea from day one.
But here's the thing, as we've seen time and time again in history, winning the first battle doesn't always mean you've won the war. Iran had a completely different playbook ready to go, one that was born from a really painful memory, and it was designed with a fascinatingly different goal in mind, not to win, but simply to not lose.
And this gets us right to the heart of Iran's entire strategy: sea denial. Think of it this way. Iran knows for a fact it cannot win a head-to-head naval fight with the US. So the goal isn't to sink the American fleet. The goal is to make the Persian Gulf so dangerous, so expensive, so deadly to operate in that even a superpower like America decides it's just not worth the price. This whole playbook wasn't dreamed up in a vacuum. It was forged in the fire of a catastrophic failure. Back in 1988, the US Navy basically annihilated Iran's fleet. That crushing defeat taught Tehran a lesson it would never forget. Trying to match America's firepower ship for ship is just suicide. They knew they had to find a totally new way to fight at sea.
So here's the kicker. Despite those massive initial losses, Iran's most dangerous assets were pretty much untouched. We're talking about a fleet of maybe 16 midget submarines. These things are small enough to sneak around in shallow coast waters and quietly plant some of their 4,000 naval mines. On top of that, you have hundreds of small, fast attack boats just designed to swarm a giant warship from every direction at once. This isn't a navy built for a fair fight. It's a denial system built to make the water itself your enemy.
And all of this, all these clashing strategies, it all comes to a boil in one single, incredibly important place: the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow little waterway is where these two completely different philosophies of war collide.
Just look at that number, 33 kilometers. At its narrowest, that's the width of the shipping channel. Now that might sound like a decent amount of space, but for a multi-billion-dollar aircraft carrier, that's an incredibly tight and dangerous alley to navigate. It makes these massive warships sitting ducks for shore-based missiles, for drones, and for those swarms of tiny boats that can pop up out of nowhere. In this fight, geography itself is one of Iran's most powerful weapons.
And this phrase really gets to the core of the American problem: dominance without control. The US military can absolutely dominate the area. It can own the skies, it can own the open seas, but it cannot guarantee 100% control of what happens inside that narrow strait. And for global trade, that's the only thing that actually matters. You can see the fundamental clash of goals right here. For the US to win, it needs perfect security. It has to find every single mine, stop every single threat. It's an all-or-nothing game. But for Iran to win, it just needs to create doubt. A single mine, or even just the rumor of a mine, can be enough to bring global shipping to a screeching halt and send insurance premiums into the stratosphere.
And look, this naval stalemate isn't just a military problem for generals to solve in some secure room. It's a weapon with immediate, real-world global economic consequences. And that's exactly how Iran plans to use it. I mean, just stop and think about that for a second. Every single day, 1/5 of the entire world's energy supply has to squeeze through this tiny little choke point. So when Iran manages to shut it down, they aren't just blockading a country, they're effectively holding the entire global economy hostage. And the shockwaves from that are felt almost instantly.
Because this, right here, is Iran's real target. The true measure of their success isn't how many American ships they can damage. It's the price you pay for gasoline in Ohio or California. When nearly 2/3 of Americans see prices at the pump surging, public support for a faraway conflict can just evaporate, almost overnight. This is economic warfare, and it's being waged directly on the U.S. home front.
And of course, a crisis like this doesn't happen in a bubble. America's biggest rivals, Russia and China, they're watching this whole thing very, very closely. And frankly, they see a massive opportunity.
For Russia and China, this crisis is just an incredible gift. Every single dollar the price of oil goes up helps fund Russia's war in Ukraine. At the same time, it distracts the U.S. Meanwhile, China uses the chaos to speed up its shift to getting secure energy overland from Russia. And in return, they both quietly supply Iran with tech and intelligence. This conflict is actively creating the exact Russia-China alliance that American foreign policy has been trying to prevent for decades.
So, with the conflict locked in this incredibly dangerous stalemate, and with the global economic and political stakes getting higher every single day, the sources we've looked at point to 3 very different ways this whole thing could break.
So, what are the options on the table? Well, first, the stalemate could just grind on. Soaring energy prices could eventually force a diplomatic deal, one that might actually look like a win for Iran. Second, the U.S. could decide to escalate with a full-blown ground invasion, which is a huge gamble that could spark a much wider war. Or third, Washington could try to build a multinational naval coalition to force the strait back open, which would share the risk, but also the control. And let me tell you, each one of those paths is loaded with immense danger.
And so this conflict really forces us to confront that fundamental question. What matters more? Overwhelming power or just the will to not lose? Iran is betting that its strategy of inflicting economic pain and simply outlasting American political will can overcome a massive technological disadvantage. The final outcome here won't just decide who controls a strait. It could end up rewriting the rules of naval warfare for the 21st century.